Eternals, the latest Marvel huge motion picture event of 2021, and I saw it. I'm going to get right into it. First off, there is going to be some minor spoilers, not huge spoilers. So if you haven't seen the Eternals, I recommend you stop watching now and go see it. I don't know necessarily if you should see it on the big screen or wait for it to come out in streaming, which I'll get into in my review here. First off, this movie is directed by Academy Award-winning director Chloe Zhao. She directed Nomadland, which was a nice independent type of film that was regarding people that don't live in homes per se, but they travel across the United States in motorhomes, live in trailer parks, etc. And it was a pretty good movie. I did see it. Is it a Marvel action movie? Absolutely not. Totally different. So I'm going to get into that as well. So this movie is based on kind of an unknown group of superheroes in the Marvel Universe. Now, they're not new by any means. They were created by Jack Kirby, one of the legendary frontrunners from Marvel Comics back in the 1960s. And it's basically a race of immortal beings with superhuman powers who have secretly lived on Earth for thousands of years. And they don't interfere with anything that goes on in our world, but they're there to battle these monsters called the Deviants. I'll get into that as well. So again, this movie is 2 hours and about 31 minutes, I believe. Yeah, no, 37 minutes. I stand corrected. Now, recently we've seen some movies that are that length that truly, truly work. For example, No Time to Die, James Bond was the longest one in the Bond franchise. It was fantastic. Avengers Endgame, of course, was a huge monster movie. It was very long, but it went by at a pretty good pace as well. And recently, Dune. I was never really a huge Dune fan, saw the movie, loved it. It went by at a great pace. And I'm going to compare Dune to this movie for a reason regarding action. Now, Dune was a very beautifully shot, visually stunning movie. Didn't have a ton of action, but because of the stunning shots and the set pieces and stuff, it made the movie go at a really good pace. Now, I'm going to compare it to Eternals because there's not a lot of action in this movie either, but it doesn't move at a good pace, and I'm going to get into it. First off, let's get into the cast of this movie. It's huge, okay? I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It's a massive cast, and that's probably one of the reasons why, and I'm going to get into my review, and why it may not have worked. First off, the major star of this movie, Angelina Jolie, plays Thena. She's one of the Immortals. We then get into one of my favorite actors, actually, Richard Madden, who plays Icarus. He's in the movie as well. Gemma Chan, she portrays Cersei. And these are all part of the good group, the Eternals. Barry Keoghan plays Droog. Salma Hayek is kind of their leader, portraying Ajax. We have Don Lee portraying this really cool character I actually did like in the movie, and I'll get into that. Gilgamesh. Lia McHugh portrays the youngest character in the Eternals, Sprite. We also have Lauren Ridloff, who plays Makara. And it's really cool with that character because she actually is, she's deaf. So she does communicate with sign language in the movie. And it's interesting to note the other characters respond as such as well. We have Kumail Nanjiani, great comedic actor. He portrays Kingo. And there's been a lot of controversy over him through this movie because of the fact that he just got ripped and jacked for this movie. But I don't know why. I'm not sure if he did it particularly for this movie, but there really was no need, and I'll get into that as well. We have some mysterious cameos. I'm not going to get into that in this review because those are truly spoilers. Those are the typical post-credit scenes, so I'll leave those alone. We'll also, I should mention, we have Brian Tyree Henry portrays Fastos. We've got another couple characters. There's a real standout side character, and I'm going to get into why it works, but I'll mention him now. Harish Patel plays this character, Karun, who's a human. He's not one of the Eternals, but he's helping one of the Eternals. And he actually, for whatever reason, brings a lot of, I don't know if it was intended or not, humor to this movie. And seeing him in every scene made me actually quite, it was quite funny. I got a couple good chuckles out of it. Now, let's get into the villain. There really is no actor playing the villain. The Deviants are just these monsters. And I gotta be honest, they're not that frightening. They really don't set the tone of fear, and maybe it's because we've had so many movies in the past, like Jurassic Park, Godzilla, etc., where we've seen all these monsters before, and these particular ones in the movie just don't bring up that level of fear or excitement for me. Um, so, without getting too much of the plot away, this movie takes place over thousands of years into present day. The Eternals, for whatever reason, have always made the decision they will not interfere in the progress of the human race. And that aspect of the movie is interesting because you do have to wonder, why did they intervene during World War II or 9/11 or any of the big events in world history, especially the events of Endgame, the Avengers Endgame, when Thanos did his thing. But their particular mission is they only get involved when the deviants, if they come back to Earth, that is, and the deviants do in this point. Um, yeah, and it's explained for a long movie. It's explained, but it's still a little confusing, um, and it almost lends credence to the fact that in the Avengers Endgame, if you haven't seen that movie, you may not understand what I'm talking about. But basically, Thanos, in the snap of a finger, erased half of humanity, half the people across the universe. Fortunately, they were brought back by the Avengers in the final Avengers Endgame movie. But it is indicated, suggested anyways, that Thanos did this because he was trying to ensure that world population didn't reach to a height where the deviants would come back. That might be a little confusing if you haven't seen the movie, but that's kind of an interesting premise. But the movie itself, and again, I fault it with too many characters, too many cast members, and not a particularly riveting storyline. Like, I really didn't follow it. The movie moved at a very slow pace for me, and a lot of the scenes, or some of the certain characters, just weren't interesting. And I'm going to get into the main character I found least interesting, excuse me, in this movie, and that was Angelina Jolie. She was a complete waste. I don't know why she was in this movie whatsoever. Her character didn't lend anything to this movie. She was, she wasn't in the movie a huge amount of time. But her character, she portrayed a character who had sort of like amnesia. So during the middle of a battle scene with these evil deviants, she would forget who she is and she started battling the other Eternals, which I found to be quite annoying. And I was wondering why the Eternals just didn't kill her. But anyways, long story short, she's one of the team members. And then during a pivotal scene, she just freezes. She doesn't do anything, and meanwhile these monsters are running amok. I just found her character annoying, and it was unnecessary. So I don't know if they put her in the movie just to give her some big star power. Mind you, in this day and age, Angelina Jolie is not really a huge star anymore, so I'm not sure why she was in it. Another side character I thought that was wasted in this movie was Kit Harington, actor Kit Harington. He would portray the future Black Knight. I get why they introduced him. He may become a superhero, but he wasn't one of the Eternals. He was involved in a love triangle with Gemma Chan's character as well as Richard Madden. Now there is a cool scene in the movie for Game of Thrones fans where he has, obviously Richard Madden and Kit Harington are both alumni of that series, where they kind of meet up, and it's kind of a nod to Game of Thrones. I get that. Um, again, there's just so many characters. They don't get a lot of screen time, so you don't really get invested in one character or another. Like Salma Hayek's in it too, but she's not in it that much. When you look at really the screen time of these characters, they're just not in it very much. The entertaining characters, I would say, would be Kumail Nanjiani, who plays Kingo. He does a pretty good job. He's quite comedic, and he's kind of a turned into a Bollywood actor throughout the ages. And again, his sidekick, Harish Patel, playing Karun. It's just comedic. It actually lends some funny moments in the movie. I did appreciate seeing those scenes with them. And I gotta say, Don Lee as Gilgamesh, he was pretty cool as a superhero. He had this really good punch. Every one of the Eternals seemed to have a different power, I'll say. And then of course the character of Sprite, she just basically was stuck as a teenager for thousands of years. She just wants to become an adult. So there was some interesting storylines. There's some updated themes in this movie. There is a romantic relationship between two of the male characters in there with an adopted child. I get that. That's cool to modernize Marvel. I think that did work. That was quite good. But realistically, I felt this director was just out of her league. She's a great independent director. but a Marvel huge period movie is not her forte. And it was just slow pace. It'd be good for an independent art house movie, but when you're talking about a Marvel movie where you sort of have some high expectations for character driven performances, special effects, action, some really great Marvel nods, some really cool scenes, I think this movie severely lacks that. This is one of the few movies I will say that I sat through, and I read a review prior to seeing this movie because reviews aren't that great on Rotten Tomatoes, and they're fair reviews. I'll say that right now. Where one critic suggested that he kept wanting to take a bathroom break just to kind of take a break from the movie. Well, lo and behold, I was the same way. I didn't take one, but I thought about just getting up and stretching my legs throughout the movie. I shouldn't be thinking that if this is a captivating, good Marvel movie. There was one point in the movie where even my daughter said to me, looked over and said, "How much longer?" And that's not a good sign either when you have a preteen that says, "How much longer" in a Marvel movie. And I actually looked at the time and I was like, "Oh my gosh, we have an hour left in this movie. Like, where's it going?" That's not a good sign either. It was very slow paced, and I'll admit I got bored throughout the movie. I truly, truly did. I wasn't invested in the characters. Towards the end of the movie, I just wanted the movie to end. I'm going to say that much. Is it a bad movie? No, it's not a bad movie, but I think this movie should have been broken up into an 8-episode series on Disney Plus. Or if you're going to try and watch it, I think it's best to stream it where you can take breaks throughout the movie. Let's get into some of the pros. Again, some of the pros I mentioned were the comedic actors, the potential setup for a new Marvel universe, I guess, will be another pro in this movie. But there's not a lot of pros. I'm sorry, I can't give it. I can't really recommend this movie as a great family experience. That brings me to some of the negatives. This is one of the few Marvel movies where they have I want to say, a pretty graphic sexual scene towards the beginning of the movie, which is completely unnecessary. Some movies that works. This is a Marvel movie aimed at getting families into the theater. I'm not sure what they were thinking with that. Some of the other cons, which were just ridiculous, and I've never seen this in a comic book movie ever, where they kept referencing the competitor comic company, DC Comics, Batman, Superman, and even Firestorm, who are all DC Comics characters. This is a Marvel movie, and the main characters kept comparing themselves. At one point, Superman was brought up. Another point, Alfred, the butler of Bruce Wayne / the Batman, and of course Firestorm, who's another DC character. I just thought that was odd, and I've read that in the reviews too. It just didn't make sense. It almost felt like the director didn't understand they were two separate franchises. I don't believe this director is a comic book fan. I don't know why Marvel hired her to take on a Marvel movie. I'm not really blaming it on her per se. I'm blaming this more on Marvel Studios. Why you would take an art house director who's good at art house movies and throw them into what's supposed to be a huge Marvel blockbuster movie. And it's far from a blockbuster. Trust me on that one. You just didn't care about the characters. There just wasn't that need to dive really into this movie. The post-credit scenes, there are 2 scenes. A lot of people say they're cool. To me, they were okay. It's not worth going to the movie just to see the post-credit scenes. You're probably better just to see somebody who's video recorded and put it on YouTube. Save yourself the money and time. There is some interesting setup, though, I will say, for a potential sequel, but I'll be honest, this is one of the Marvel movies where I don't want to see a sequel. I have to rank this by far. I know if people are saying Thor: The Dark World is the worst Marvel movie ever. I truly believe this one might be down there. It's not the worst movie I've seen. I should say, as a standalone movie, if this was not a Marvel movie, perhaps I would have enjoyed it a little bit more. But the fact it's a Marvel movie set in the Marvel universe, it's not up to the standard that it should be. I found this movie to be quite dull for a good majority of the time. So that's my review of The Eternals. Do I recommend this movie? If you're a diehard Marvel fan, or if you're a fan of the classic Jack Kirby Eternals series, sure, go and see it. If there's nothing else to see and you want to see a movie, I would suggest you have a good night's sleep the night before. Perhaps have a nice coffee like I did to try and keep you awake and motivated. Or I would suggest you just wait until it comes on Disney Plus for free, or even a rent, where you can take a break if you find yourself getting bored. And you might very well like this movie. I've seen a lot of the fans on Rotten Tomatoes saying this is a great Marvel movie. I've seen a couple people saying it's the best one. I'm not sure if they've ever seen another Marvel movie, but everybody's different. So, but I should say the critics have really pounded this movie, and it's one of those times where I do agree with the critics on this movie. It just wasn't up to the standard it should be. In any event, I mean, we've got a few more weeks and the new Spider-Man movie comes out, so I'm pretty excited for that. On a scale of 1 to 10, what do I give the Eternals? I give the Eternals about a 5 out of 10, perhaps even a 4.5. I don't really recommend this movie. It's not the worst movie I've ever seen, but it's certainly not worth taking the family out for a afternoon outing at the matinees. Tell me what you thought of the Eternals. Like, subscribe my channel. See you later.